stuff.
Jan.
Tonal.
That's good.
Ronnie.
Hello, and welcome to the Grails48 entry from Team Kavta. Our application is called Haystack, and it attempts to make it easier for you to track the unresolved errors in your applications. The traditional approach to this problem has been to check through production log files, but this is laborious and has a number of other shortcomings. The main one is that there's not necessarily a one-to-one correspondence between an error message in the log files and a bug in your application. For example, if you have 10 null pointer exception messages in your log files, they could all be generated from the same bug, or you could have multiple issues. There's also no easy way to cross-reference error messages in the logs with tickets in the bug tracker or the current state of the code base. For example, if you see an error message in the log files, is there already an open ticket for that, or has it already been resolved? Using the log file approach, there's no easy way to determine this. There's also no easy way to see which issues are related to each other. For example, which errors were thrown from the same request or thread. Because this process of looking for unresolved errors using log files is like looking for a needle in a haystack, we called our application Haystack, and it tries to solve this problem. Before I start the demo, I'll just briefly introduce the system architecture. There's two main components. The first of which is a Grails plugin that you install into the application whose errors you wish to track. When an error occurs, this sends an XML payload to the Haystack server, which then groups together error occurrences that are originating from the same place, or errors that are generated by the same bug. It also collects contextual information about each error, for example the HTTP parameters, the headers, the session data, the stack trace, and so on. And just to briefly define what we mean by an error, the plugin considers an error to be any time there's an unhandled exception, any time something is logged at the error level, and it also provides a spring bean that you can use to send errors if neither of the other definitions of an error are suitable. So now we'll move on to demonstrating the application itself. I have here two tabs. In the left-hand tab, there's just a very simple Grails application that already has the Haystack plugin installed. In the right-hand tab is the Haystack server application. So that's the application that captures the error information, and we log into that to see what errors our application has already generated. So I'll log in there now. So we have the ability to create multiple projects. Typically, we would create a project for each application whose errors we want to track. So I've already created two projects here. Now the application on the left is my big bad project. So we select that, and we can see the errors that that application has already generated. As I mentioned before, one of the major advantages of Haystack over the traditional log file approach is that it can group together related errors. In other words, errors that were caused by the same bug. Now the way it does this is that if it gets sent an error and the same exception was thrown from the same place in the source code, then it will group those errors together. So in the first line here, we can see that this error was caused by the exception class exception being thrown. It was thrown from the error controller on line 30. And in the right hand column here, we can see that this has occurred twice. Now if I want to drill down to the individual occurrences of this error, I just click on more details here, and I see the two occurrences here and when they happened. Above the table here, I again see the exception type, and I can see where in the source code it was thrown from and the error message. To see more details about each individual occurrence, I just click on it here, and I get a lot more information. The host was thrown from, the thread name, the URL, all the HTTP data, the headers, the parameters, and the stack trace. And then to see the corresponding information about the other occurrence, I click on that. Now, if multiple errors were thrown from this same thread, I can see those by clicking here. And it will then show me all the errors that occurred in this thread. So I'll just return to the default errors view to talk about some other features of Haystack. Notice that we track the status of each error to indicate whether or not it's been resolved. And we can change its status from open to resolved simply by clicking on the button. We can also show only the unresolved issues using this filter here. There's also a search field which allows you to search for errors that match a particular query. At the moment, the fields that are searched are the class of the exception and the exception message. So if I search for first error there, it will show me this error here whose exception matches first error, and I can then drill down and see the instances. So there's the string that was matched there. Haystack also records the environment in which each error occurred. I can see the list of environments here and filter the errors by those that occurred in the development environment, for example, by selecting development from the drop-down. So to finish up, I'll show you the application in action, just so you know it's not all smoke and mirrors. So in Haystack here, we have the list of all the unresolved errors for the test application on the left. So what I'll do is I'll generate a new kind of error for this application, so an unhandled runtime exception. So there we see the exception in the application itself. Now if we go back to Haystack and refresh the errors list, there we see the new error, and it has a count of 1 because it's only occurred once. So if I go back to the application and generate another occurrence of that same error and refresh the error list in Haystack, the count has increased to 2. Again, to see the individual occurrences, I go to more details, and here they are. And I can see more information about each occurrence of the error by clicking on the time it happened again, and again, there's all the relevant information. So that's about all from us in Berlin. Good night. And